Hello and welcome to Circle Time, the Early Years podcast. I'm Glenn Denny and I'm delighted that I've got a returning guest on the podcast. I'm so pleased to welcome back the lovely Alison Featherbe. Alison, welcome back.
Oh, thanks, Glenn. It's lovely to chat to you again. Thank you.
Oh, it's so nice to have you back again. Now, there's been lots going on as there always is in early years, but one thing that kind of we've been messaging back and forth lately about toilet training. And I mean, we were literally just before I started recording the podcast, we did just say there's the new, and I'm putting this in inverted commas, new guidance. I'll put that in inverted commas too, from the government about toilet training. But it's a bigger kind of thing than just read that and that will solve all your problems, isn't it?
It is a really broad subject. There's so many different ways to potty train or toilet train, but it really is that shared responsibility and the time that it can take to help children get from being in nappies to being out of nappies. And really what we are thinking about is that next stage of learning, which is, going to school. We know that we've got Kindred Squared release a document around school readiness every year, and there is still they're saying that there's a lack of information and support parents are finding, and they think that the research is so far saying that actually school readiness is even less than in 2023, which is a bit of a worry.
It is. I mean, there's, like you're saying there, that in that report there, that but there is a lot in the sort of the wider media and the news and that of, even my dad was saying to me, it's like, did you see that news report about there's children going to school still in nappies? And I'm like, yeah, but so what is happening? Why have we got to the place we are now, do you think? What's slowing this process down?
That is so true. It does hit the headlines, and it is definitely slowing. There does seem to be a slowing down of the process. I think, from one aspect, it's around parenting, and parents could be quite isolated. I think when I was growing up, and when I had my own children, we were encouraged to toilet train early for some
Yeah.
reason. And I think sometimes we do miss that developmental slot. It is really hard to think about toilet training, and people don't know where to start. We know that every child is individual, and we obviously need to start there. But it's those signs and indicators that people get confused about. And there's so many different books and approaches that we could use. People don't know where to start, and they don't know where to go with what feels right for them and their family, and they're not empowered to do that. But I really do think it's around the shared responsibility that we have, as providers, to help parents to be very much part of this period of time. I know that it can be very stressful if you're a practitioner and you're being part of that process to help children to be toilet trained. And sometimes, the rest of the learning and development, although it still is learning and development, the rest of the learning and what you've got out for the day should be sort of sidetracked to focus on toilet training. Independence is a real key skill, obviously, for lifelong learning. And I think that it's important that we have a policy around that so that we can really be part of that process to help children with this very important independence skill.
Definitely. And like when you say it's a shared kind of responsibility, it's true because I mean a lot of parents, and talking as a provider, a lot of parents do come up to us and say, well, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to start. And that's like, I think that's the biggest thing I've heard. I mean, going back to when I first started, I mean, there's a chasm of difference between when I first started with parents like, oh, we're going to start potty training just now, and this is what we're doing. Parents kind of almost knew what they needed to do, but whereas now they're like, what do we do? They're asking us, what do they do? And I feel there is that huge shift between parents just not sure of where they start and what the signs they're looking for, and they're coming to us more and more for advice.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, but we are professionals,
Hmm.
and it's good that we're trusted sources of information.
Hmm.
And I think that sometimes, they might be talking to a practitioner who, let's say, could be very young and not have any knowledge and experience
Hmm.
in this field. We could be talking to someone who has been in early years for many years. Like myself, with their own opinions and thoughts.
Hmm.
And there could be somebody in the middle, just not quite sure what to say, and how to link that child's developmental milestones, and how to recognize that child is ready, and how to talk to parents about that. Let's face it, it does take time to talk to parents about
Yeah.
that. And often when we're picking up and dropping off, that we haven't allocated that large amount of time for that. So I do advocate either a guide or some sort of training that providers could provide their parents, so that they're all singing from the same hymn sheet. I think parents need to be very clear about the systems and processes and things that we do in provision to help children through the process as well, and to really continue to advocate that it is a shared responsibility, because we all want children to feel happy, safe, and secure enough to learn and to grow
Hmm.
and to go to school, feeling confident, because we know that schools, their resources are stretched. And in the first couple of terms, if you're just, helping children to go to the toilet and helping them to line up and put their hand up and to sit down, that's an awful lot of the reception year that schools are having to do before they can, really embed the learning and that they've got ready for children. And I know that children with additional needs, that is a separate issue.
Hmm.
And I would definitely suggest that if you have children with additional needs, to really think about the uniqueness of that, and to encourage parents to talk to the health visitor. And there are a number of websites that parents can go to if you do have a child with either communication needs or any other needs around toileting. But so in the main, I'm talking about those children who are who for whatever reason, toilet training is being delayed. But we also know that if toilet training is delayed, that can be associated with a rise in bowel and bladder problems or conditions, and that doesn't help moving forward either, for sure.
I think you're right. That definitely having still being in practice and things like that. I do hear or see rather children with bowel and bladder issues, particularly the rising constipation with children, like really, and children holding on to their poo, which I think let's get it out there. We need to talk about poo. I mean, let's face it, in my working day, I talk a lot about poo anyway. It's like kind of our everyday go-to, but there is a lot of serious issues with children who are, I mean, I worked with a child a couple of years back where they literally did hold on to it. And it was so difficult for them. And obviously this was then getting worse and worse and worse. And it was being impacted. And it's terrifying for a child where they're so used to just they can let it go within their nappy and then it's fine. And then somebody comes and cleans it up.
Yeah, it can be really terrifying, and obviously that's also really painful. But the difficulty around constipation is that's, children have got very small bodies, and that's pressing on their bladder.
Hmm.
So their bladder then is smaller than it should be, and not able to hold as much urine as it should be as
Yeah.
well. And so then that whole process of toilet training is by that very nature going to get difficult. And that can result in problems and infections as well. But holding, I think, is I think when children realize that they can do that, that's part of a happy, healthy, normal development. But it's how we approach that, and how we recognize that that's happening, and how we're calm around that, and our approach shouldn't overcomplicate things. And I absolutely know that, if children don't go to the toilet or they don't eat, that is a major red flag for parents, and it unlocks all sorts of emotions that we didn't even know that we had. But I do think we need to definitely reassure parents around that, but we also need to be calm ourselves. My personal opinion is that food is absolutely key.
Mhm.
We know that children sometimes eat quite a restricted diet. Um, it all really does start from weaning, doesn't it? And
Mhm.
and offering children a variety of unprocessed things that can help with their the development of their bowel and their bladder as well. We also know, there is a requirement in the EVIFS about children having access to water. Sometimes I wonder how much we encourage that as well, because children do forget, and we know that if you're thirsty, then you're already dehydrated. I think that definitely more reminders in the day about drinking water would help with constipation as well.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, there is that bit. Yeah, I was lucky. I worked with a really very wise practitioner a few years back who said exactly the same sort of thing as you there, that the diet is so important. They need that they need that fresh fruit and veg, and they need that roughage within their diet in order to be able to pass through their bodies safely and easily. And there is a difference in children's diets from when I first started to now. There is a lot more processed stuff. I'm seeing a lot of the children coming in with their snack thing, and it's these wafer things. I don't even know what they are. It looks like packaging from something I'd buy from Amazon, and there is a lot more of that rather than the fresh fruit and veg. And we encourage fruit and things like that. We have the fruit bowl coming out every day, and we encourage the children to take part in it by getting them to cut it up. So it's making it that fun part of routine, which is information we then also pass on to parents. Like, they'll eat this, but why don't you get them to chop it up themselves?
Yeah, I mean, we know that fruit and veg it can be really expensive for some families,
Mhm.
and we don't like waste. No one likes waste, and sometimes I think when you're going shopping, you see something that's branded apple slices, and you think, oh, I know they're going to eat these apple slices, and when we open up the packet, they're obviously some sort of process around those apple slices, and they could be dehydrated things. And yes, for sure, children are probably going to eat them. And as a parent, you're probably going to think, phew, I managed to get at least an apple slice in, but it's not the real food that
No,
we know that children need. And our bodies have been designed over many, many years and generations. And generationally, our bodies just aren't used to all this pre-packaged processed stuff.
mhm.
And it's no wonder really that we do have bladder and bowel conditions around that.
Definitely is. I mean, the one thing I'm kind of moving away from the food aspect of it, and this is something that, again, it's personal to me. And I always say when I'm talking to parents about toilet training and things like that, is I hate, and yeah, anybody that knows me in practice, and I'm very honest about it, I hate pull-ups. I hate them. Do you know, I'm completely honest about it. Um,
Yeah.
even children, instead of nappies, they will wear a pull-up. Fine, it's parents' choice. I get it. I hate them because they're a nightmare to change when you're trying to change a
Yeah,
child.
totally.
But it's parents that kind of use these. It's like, oh, well, we'll go from nappies into pull-ups. Why? What's the difference? And I do.
There,
I genuinely, I'm open and honest, and I say that to parents. What's the difference?
Oh, 100%. There's absolutely no difference. It's something that we've been sold as parents. It's been repackaged up to be something as part of the toilet training process. But like you, it's definitely not something that I advocate. Um, Children just don't feel wet anymore, and I
No.
think that is a big issue. And it is part of the toilet training process to feel wet and to know what that looks
Yes.
like, and to help children to ask for help as well. I think we've solved a lot of their children's problems, and and have put them into positions where they're not asking us for help. So obviously that's part of what we do in an early years provision, is to help children with their communication and their language, and communicating their needs and wants. But children need to recognize that they're wet is one of the first and foremost thing, and then ask for help around that and know that it maybe doesn't feel comfortable down there. And that is all very much part of the process. But no, I wholeheartedly agree with the pull-ups. We also know, interestingly, that parents that choose I was going to say recycled nappies, but that's not the case. So cotton nappies that are
Oh, the cloth
reusable.
nappies, yeah.
Yeah, they actually, children who have those do toilet train far quicker,
Hmm.
um, because they can feel, and they they tend to be more bulky,
Yeah.
and as children grow, 2, 3, 4, they want to play and they want to get down on the floor and climb and things like that, and they can very quickly sense that actually there's this big bulky thing that they've got, um and they've got to organize as well as themselves. So it's a really freeing for children to not be in nappies as well. And yeah, aside from all of the independent skills, it really does help children with other physical skills as well.
Absolutely does. I mean, yeah, it's when you said about children needing that experience of feeling wet and like that, I'm going to say the word uncomfortable, but you know what I mean? Like we never like a child to be uncomfortable, but they need to know that this doesn't feel genuinely. I just heard the hallelujah chorus right behind you there when you said that, because it is true. And this is what I say to parents as well. Like, 'cause, yeah, jokingly, I've always said I've been in early years for about 100 years. Um, and it is that kind of experience that I built up. It's like children do need that experience of feeling wet. And I say to parents, it's like, please, we are doing this, when you are toilet training your child, just bring in their entire wardrobe, because that's what we need.
Yeah.
We need, we will change them as many times as you like.
Yeah, and we can go and get some very cheap leggings and things like that,
Hmm.
up, straight down. Yeah, and pants as well. They can just go up and down. There will be more washing. That's without a doubt that's going to
Yeah.
happen. But it's a very important thing, a stage that we need to do. We shouldn't be afraid of it, and we should welcome it and see it as a real learning process. There's so much language and communication around toilet training. There's so much social aspects around toilet training. There's conversations that we need to have with children about our bodies, and they are interested. We know that, certainly 3 and 4 year olds are certainly interested in their body and what it does. There's some great books that can help and explain that too. And I know we don't want to make children feel uncomfortable by just being wet, but the being uncomfortable when you're constipated, oh my goodness, that's so much worse. And
Yeah.
we are then much more powerless around constipation. So yes, I think that that recognizing, I mean, there's a whole science experiment as well, isn't it? Wet and dry. We can have those conversations, I believe, from 18 months onwards.
Yeah, absolutely. It is that bit. I mean, I say as well, it's like, there are some parents as well, and I suppose it's how they are as individuals and how they, respond to things. But some parents are uncomfortable or don't like the idea of the mess and things like that. It's like you're saying, it's like there's so many cheap places. I jokingly say to parents, but with an element of seriousness, it's like Primark is your best friend. Go to Primark, get loads of cheap pants, because if you really don't want a grotty pair of pooey pants being brought back for washing, we'll chuck them. We will throw them
Yeah.
away, because if they're that grim and you don't like it, that's fine. And I think it's that relationship you build with parents and that understanding that that's not for them. This doesn't suit this particular parent, and this is the conversation you have with them. And I think again, it's down to that relationship, that partnership that you have. That if you
Mm.
know your families, know your parents, you can have that conversation that is a bit more open. And I think that's the bit. Sometimes we're a bit afraid to start talking about the toilet. You
Mm.
know, I mean, there's a lovely little story I've got. We had somebody come in to do a bit of supply work for us recently, and we'd just bought a book all about poo, as you do, because we're nursery and we like to talk about poo. And we we kind of got this storybook, and she was like, "You've got a book about poo?" I'm like, "Yes, we're a nursery. We're going to talk about poo. Off you go. Go and read that story about poo." And I think we need to kind of have that big, bold conversation, because I think that's possibly the bit that parents get hung up on. It's like, but what about the poo? It's like, well, you've been changing your child's pooey nappies for the last 2 years, you know?
Yeah, there are, you're absolutely right. There's some great books. I know I can remember reading my children one about different animals doing different types of poo. I mean,
Yes,
who knew?
that's
So
the book we've
interesting.
got.
So interesting. And I learned something from
A
that.
wombat with a
And look,
cuboid poo.
we love a bit of poo talk, absolutely. And children are fascinated. You know, they do want to learn. They want to know that other children are in the same position as well, I think is really
Yeah.
important. That they're all working towards the same end. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, that's the thing as well. Yeah, it seems to happen in nursery as well. It seems to come in like groups. You'll start with one, and then the next thing you know, you've got half a dozen. At the moment, we've got a right potty party going on in my setting, and that's great because it's like, oh, well, so and so's going there, and they're going there, and literally we're running out of space to get them all in. But it's fine. Like we'll work it out, you know. But it is nice when, and you said earlier that about the social aspect of it, and it is. I mean, in our sort of nappy changing and toileting policy that we have, I rewrote it recently to ensure that we've got communication and language and PSED in there as well, because they're really, really important. We should be talking about our body functions and what it does, and learning about these things, and like feeling wet isn't nice and we need to clean our bottom because it will get sore. But it's all that conversation. I mean, we had an audit done recently, and the person that came in to do the audit was really interested in our conversations that we're having with children when we were doing nappies and toileting. It was like, it's great that you talk to children. I said, why wouldn't we? You know,
Mm.
we talk to children all the time. Why shouldn't we be having lovely conversations with the children whilst we're doing everyday processes of, toileting and nappy changing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all that intimate care, the policies that we have around that, it is around safeguarding as well, and it's
Hmm.
around. We know we've got some changes to that coming up in the safeguarding reform. So yes, having a robust and followed procedures around intimate care, I think, is really important. And around being respectful and
Hmm.
around telling children what you're doing. It's all part of giving them a voice. And also, it's important to, as children grow and develop, it's also really important to name your children's private parts as well.
Yeah.
And that is all part of safeguarding. So, yes, not only is it around, children being independent and their personal social skills and their self-esteem, it is absolutely around safeguarding as well. So, yes, for us, it starts really early with that intimate care policy that we provide for babies and the youngest children. And if we're constantly having those conversations, making sure that children feel really valued and respected. And I always bring this into my safeguarding training, which is, and don't shout across the room, have you pooed? Has somebody done a poo? Because that is really
Hmm.
disrespectful. We think we need to be very, very clear right from the start that this is around respect and this is around children's individual autonomy and about and how we approach that right from the start, I think is very important.
Definitely. I mean, there is that bit. It's almost like you say, like shouting across. And we've been in placements or settings that have done that, and it's like it's almost like reversing what we're trying to do, and it's making, have you pooed? Well, I don't really want to admit that. It's making it shameful again, and then we're kind of pushing back against what we're trying to do and encourage this natural body movement and things like that. I mean, for us, we tend to go up to the child, and if there's communication issues, we'll take the nappy with us so that we've got that object of reference. Um,
Lovely.
but we'll do that. But if it's another child that will say, "Oh, it's like, do you want to come with me and I'll do your nap?" It's that one-to-one conversation, because this is between you and that child. This is the transaction that's happening between the two of you. And
Mm.
it's not business of the whole room to know that I'm off to go and change so and so's nappy right now, or so and so's got a poo. It's like, oh, yeah, we've got some children now that are starting to understand that they've got a poo and they'll come up to a grown up, doesn't matter which one. And we also give them choice. If they don't want whoever's on nappy duty, if that particular child doesn't want them to do it, they can ask for another member of staff. And that's
Yeah.
child choice. And that's kind of freeing for them as well, that they don't have to worry that, so and so is going to change their nappy when actually they want that one over there.
100%. I mean, that's so empowering. It really is. Um, and I can remember wetting myself in reception, and I can still remember my thoughts and my feelings. I was made to put on orange pants. I don't ask me why I remember that, but I can remember all those feelings of dread and people pointing to me and being made to bring back my wet pants and put them in a bag. I can remember every single one of those things. I cannot remember large parts of my childhood, but those big moments like that do have an effect on children forever. And we are very much part of that learning process, and we should be respectful at all times. Sometimes those memories sit in a place that fills us with dread for a very long time. It's like can be re-traumatizing. So yeah, it is really, really important that we are part of that shared responsibility, and we help parents to be on board, fully on board, and to recognize that actually this is part of learning. There's
Mhm.
so much around all of this that fits into the EYFS curriculum. It is a massive part of everyone's life if we get this right. And if we don't get this right, and if we delay it and we delay it, we know that there will be problems. There'll be problems around children feeling, self-esteem. There'll be problems around independence. We know there'll be problems around bladder and bowel control, and it will have such a knock-on effect. So I think the message really is, it is a shared responsibility to know that parents need to know what their part of that role is, and how to recognize those signs. And we need to really be fully on board and help them as much as we possibly can. And not see it as an annoyance, not see it as something that's going to go on and on forever. There will be a beginning and there will be an end. And it is vital that we look at it that way.
Definitely. I think there's that bit as well. It's like one of the questions I get asked quite regularly when parents are starting to talk about it is, how long is it going to take? It's like, I mean, my honest answer is how long is a piece of string? Because it depends on how we're approaching this, how well they take to it. Every child is individual. There is, like you say, there's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end. How
Yeah,
long that time scale is, it depends on the child. It depends on what's happening. It depends on what's happening at home. It depends on so many factors. Does the child get poorly in the middle of it all and have to start all over again? It, it's kind of that whole kind of cycle. It's like each child is individual, and that's how we treat it.
it's no wonder that we put it off.
It really is. I think some parents go, "Oh, I don't know if I can face this yet." And it's like, I mean, I've had some parents recently as well. They've started, and within a couple of days, the child's had like 12 million accidents. Okay, that's fine, don't worry. The next time they come into nursery, oh, we've just popped them back in nappies now because I don't think they were quite ready. Oh,
I
okay.
know.
Yeah, it's
No.
like, oh, right, okay. And I try and gently say, it's like, oh, it's not maybe such a good idea. It's like there's going to be lots of accidents, and that's fine. That's all part of the process. It's okay for that to happen, but it's probably not a good idea to have gone backwards because it's just really confusing. They don't know where they are now. Are they going in pants or are they in nappies? You know,
Yeah.
it's that kind of. I like to hold a parent's hand where we can, but I know we've got to let them make their own decisions as well. But
Mm,
it's difficult when you're trying to say, well, actually, you're just confusing your child here, and
mm,
it's like they need to know that it's going to happen and it's okay. And what you're
mm,
saying really almost is it's not okay that you're wetting yourself, so I'm going to pop you
mm.
back in nappies.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that parents, we know that there's a lot of time pressures around all of this as
Mhm.
well. But there is so much information out there. And this can also be confusing to parents as well. I think that obviously, if children come to an early years provision, they're very lucky, but they're also very lucky that, and parents are very lucky that we are a trusted source and we can
Mhm.
have the answers to lots of these questions. I think we do need to be very clear to parents about what this looks like and how we're going to help their child whenever they decide or whenever we decide together. I think this time of year coming up to the spring and summer is probably going to be slightly easier. Not only have we got children going to school, um, at the end of August into September, but so it is a perfect if you have got a child that's going to school this year to do it in the summer term, but also think about those ones that are going to school next year. I do think this is an opportunity for them as well to practice, and it might take a bit longer if you're a bit younger, but in my experience, it actually doesn't. We just need to bite the bullet, ensure that everyone knows their roles and responsibilities around that, including the child, and that we just do it.
I think as well, it's consistency, isn't it? I know
Yes.
for my setting, all my team, if we're sort of giving parents information, we say I mean, we always go to the one source point, and we always say go to the ERIC website, the Children's Bowel and Bladder Charity, because their information is really good. And at least then we're all giving the consistent message. My team look at that for information as well. And I think it's whatever your approach, it doesn't matter if you use a different source of information at a different setting, so long as your setting is all following the same advice and you're all giving that same advice, there's the consistency that parents need and trust.
Absolutely. And the messaging around the toilet and those one-liners that we've all got as teachers and as adults and so that children get used to those things and get used to the process. Sometimes we need to break down the steps even further for children, but this is all about giving children time,
Mhm.
and being respectful around that. I know we've got routines of the day, lunch is coming and snack is here and things like that. Let's get outside. But it's actually children require at this particular stage in their life time, and we need to be really respectful around that and give them the time to learn about themselves and to learn about all the systems and processes that they've got to negotiate, from tearing off a bit of toilet paper to asking for help to recognizing that they're wet. There's so many aspects of it. I think it is definitely something that we should talk about as a team. Maybe that might be a good idea to put down everyone's thoughts and feelings around that so that you can sort of unify that and get together a really good policy from intimate care to toilet training, and one that you can share with parents so that they know exactly their sort of role and responsibility within that as well. And then together, we can make sure that children have as nice a time as they possibly can around toilet training.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of time, time has caught up with us, I'm afraid, Alison. So thank you so much for talking about it. I mean, it's a subject that we talk about kind of openly in settings, and it's nice to kind of share it with the wider world. And like, it's nothing to be ashamed of. We all do it. Even the king does it. So if we can do it, so can we.
Exactly. I love that. Thank you so much.
Alison Featherbe, thank you so much.